Before Grievous was the fearsome cyborg general of the Separatist Droid Army, he was called Qymaen Sheelal. He was a Kaleesh warrior. The Kaleesh are a reptilian humanoid species with scaly skin, slitted yellow eyes, snake-like flat noses, long ears, and tusks. They reside in wild space. They live in a way many from the core worlds would consider primal. They were known as formidable warriors without kindness, weakness, or vulnerability. The Kaleesh were engaged in a war that had nothing to do with the Galactic Republic. The nearby Yam-Re used their superior technology to invade Kaleesh worlds, steal their resources, and sell the populations into slavery. I'm just going to go ahead and call him Grievous for the remainder of the video, even though in the beginning he was still technically Sheelal. It's just for the ease of narration and not to go back and forth and confuse everybody with what name means what. I will make note of when he actually makes the switch to his new identity. Young Grievous saw the bits of war going on around him. He saw the bad parts of the Yam-Re victories, but also saw the strength of the Kaleesh people. They would attack and decimate other cultures as well as strike back against the Yam-Re. As a child, he hero worshipped the warlords at the head of his society. Watching the warriors return home with the spoils of war sparked something in him that he would not forget his entire life. His warrior training started very young. His father instructed him in firearms first. By the age of 8, he was an accomplished marksman and had already gunned down 40 enemy soldiers. His warrior instincts and thirst for power only grew as he did. He climbed fast in the ranks and became a warlord. Along with his long-range weapon training, he learned close-quarters combat. He devoted himself to studying tactics and battle strategies. He was also a leader who could instruct, educate, and inspire the soldiers under him. In the tradition of his people, he would wear a mask made from the skull of his planet's deadliest hunter, the Mumu. Not a great name for what's supposed to be a fearsome beast. To get an idea of what this could look like, picture the robotic body Grievous would one day be trapped in during the Clone Wars. His mask there was molded after the bone one he wore in his youth. He would also ritualistically smear the mask with Karabak blood before going into battle. Another aspect of Grievous that started around this time was his taking of enemy weapons as trophies. Being so successful in war, Grievous was looked at by the people as an almost mythical figure. He was given, or likely took, extra privileges to go along with the strength and reputation that he had acquired. Along with these new privileges, he adopted the name Grievous. When he learned of the peace-promoting Galactic Republic, he hated their way of doing things. He likely saw them as soft and overreaching, maybe even seeing them as undeserving as all the territory they claimed. Perhaps he feared their reach would one day find Kaleesh, his home planet. His anger intensified when he learned of the protectors of the Republic, the Jedi Order. He heard stories of the Jedi and their combat efficiency. He heard about their supernatural abilities and the force that they were derived from. His jealousy led to a deep hatred. Meanwhile, in Republic space, a crooked politician was secretly operating as an evil Sith Lord, Darth Sidious. Sidious was pulling the strings of the entire known galaxy to generate a war that would elevate him to political power not seen in centuries. He would also use this conflict to discredit and decimate the Jedi Order. Sidious's apprentice at this time was a fallen Jedi Knight, Dooku, who was his Sith apprentice with the name Darth Tyrannus. Dooku did a lot of work for Sidious so the Master could remain in the shadows. He's the one who recruited Jango Fett to be the template for a grand army of clones that were grown in secret. Dooku also heard stories of this fearsome warrior changing how things were done in wild space. Tales of the warrior's conquest, determination, and hatred for the Jedi. Tyrannus knew this savage warrior could be used as a leader of the droid army that was being constructed. Grievous could be manipulated into a tool to help Sidious's plans come to fruition. Grievous didn't yet know the larger workings of known space were coming for him. He and his army were finally strong enough to eliminate the opponent they had been plaguing their people and making them slaves as long as Grievous could remember, the Yam-Re. Grievous took the fight straight to their homeworld of Huk. His plans were going well as blow after blow was struck against the Yam-Re. The only thing Grievous's brilliant military mind didn't count on was his sworn enemy reaching out to his future enemy, the Galactic Republic. Without fully understanding the situation, the Republic sent the Jedi Order to intervene. The Kaleesh attacks were stopped. They were punished for their aggression in the form of embargoes and tariffs. Thousands died from lack of resources and food as a direct result of these actions. Seeing his people suffer at this republic he hated only through knowledge of them angered him even more. The Republic and its Jedi were now his top priority in defeating. Easing Grievous into the war machine slowly, he was first set up as an enforcer for the Intergalactic Banking Clan, a group loyal to the Separatist movement. Grievous wanted to bring his loyal bodyguards from Kaleesh, the Isvashra, a lethal group he trained personally and had won many battles with. His request was actually shot down. It's likely Sidious wanted Grievous for his battle tactics and brutality, but knew if he had backup more loyal to him than he ever would be the Separatist cause, Grievous was a risk if he decided to turn on Sidious and his plans. Instead of his elite thinking soldiers, Grievous was given a small army of early generation B-1 battle droids. These were the droids that all answered to a central command unit and had no reasoning or learning ability on their own. They were also the dumb ones that couldn't help but say the obvious things they saw going on around them. Shockingly, Grievous accepted these limitations and took command of the droid army. He was still an effective leader, despite his new troops' limitations. It did help that he had seemingly limitless loads of B-1s he could throw in waves at the enemy. Fed up with the idiotic first-gen B-1s, he demanded a personal bodyguard that he could actually rely on. He knew he wouldn't get his Isvashra back, but Holowan Laboratories created the IG-100 Magna Guard combat droids to fit his every expectation. They were given state-of-the-art combat programs, but Grievous had these wiped so he could train the droids himself. These droids had advanced artificial intelligence and could learn in the field. They were equipped with unique electrostaffs that could fend off a Jedi's lightsaber. Their combat techniques would also put even a very skilled Jedi, such as Obi-Wan Kenobi, through their paces. In addition to excelling at close quarters combat, the Magna Guards were given weapon proficiency programming in blasters and rocket launchers. They were also capable of piloting starfighters. Because of their advanced intelligence, they were given something like a command position over standard infantry droids. The Magna Guards were such a success that other high-ranking Separatists began using them as bodyguards as well, even Count Dooku. I was always under the assumption that Grievous was a crude, cheap version of Darth Vader, more machine than organic because of an accident or catastrophic loss in battle. That's not exactly the case. Grievous actually volunteered to be cut up bit by bit and transformed into a cyborg. The word he would have used if questioned was improved. The robotic pieces came little by little, each one enhancing his speed, reflexes, strength, and combat proficiency. He was obsessed with being physically on par with any Jedi Knight. There's rumors that the supposed enhancements led to Grievous's anger and hatred deepening even further. It could be a direct side effect of becoming less organic, or it could be that his quest for never-ending power was not providing the results he wanted. More so, the physical results he was getting may have been exactly what he was hoping for, only he knew he would never have all the powers of a Jedi. This drove his brain, that was already cracking, over the edge. Along with his voluntary self-mutilation, there was some form of attack or sabotage, maybe an assassination attempt. The details are a little foggy on this, as many of them came out during Disney's reign, where everything new was supposed to be canon. There was a story of San Hill from the Banking Clan, along with Poggle the Lesser of Geonosis, and Count Dooku himself trying to assassinate Grievous. A popular Lucasfilm storyteller, Pablo Hidalgo, said that this story is now legends, but other canon sources have referenced it. To make the most sense I can out of the muddy details, Grievous and his droid army were aboard a troop transport. This transport was sabotaged by Dooku, this being the most common version I read of the story. In the explosion, Grievous was flung from the wreckage and nearly killed. The explosion destroyed most of what remained of his organic body. Likely surprised that he survived, Dooku saw a new opportunity to exploit Grievous's hatred of the Jedi. Grievous wakes up in a bacta-tank, barely holding on. Dooku convinces him, and it doesn't take much convincing, that the Jedi were the ones behind the attack. He gets Grievous to agree to being put back together in a mostly mechanical body and sworn back into military service to keep fighting against the Jedi. As the Sith Lords oversaw Grievous's rebuild, they had the medical droids also alter his brain to make him an even more capable warrior. Further rewiring of the brain was needed to tie in the extra limbs in Grievous's body. Finally, Sidious and Dooku decided to alter the Kaleesh's brain to erase some of his past, increasing his loyalty to their own cause. Many of his organs survived the cyborg alterations, those done voluntarily and those forced. Even out of these original pieces, most had at least a small amount of tampering to be optimized for war. His lungs were damaged beyond repair in the explosion, and he was left with a persistent cough for the rest of his life. His vocabulator was designed to mimic his original voice, which gives us a strong idea of what he would have sounded like before the transformation. He had to go through countless hours of surgery for the remnants of his organic body to work with the robotic parts. Millions of electrodes connected the signals from his spinal column into his limbs. Extra modifications had to be made for his extra limbs and capabilities that his organic body never had. He had part of his original skull and most of his brain left. An access port was left in the metal head to allow for the electronics that kept his body running to be maintained. Though parts of him were still organic, he was truly more machine than man. He didn't need food or water. He could survive without oxygen, whether in the vacuum of space or underwater. He was immune to poisons, toxins, and gases. Grievous's anger continued to grow. He was now angry that he was basically a droid, as he hated the droids in his army so much. This anger was only compounded because he had to admit to himself that he voluntarily chose to start down this path. He was then assigned a medical droid, EV-A4D. This droid constantly helped Grievous tweak his robotic body for better combat performance. Dooku took a further interest in his new toy. He had in his possession a lightsaber from a long-dead Jedi friend that would be the first in Grievous's collection. To diverge once again, some sources say this Jedi was never given a name. A comic from 2005 called Star Wars Visionaries: The Eyes of Revolution claims that the lightsaber in question actually belonged to the famous Jedi Sifo-Dyas. In either Legends or canon, Dooku and Sifo-Dyas were close, so it very well could be. When not training with Dooku in lightsaber combat, Grievous would watch holovids of Jedis in combat and study stolen Jedi materials outlining the lightsaber styles, use cases, and scenarios. Grievous passed his teaching onto the loyal Magna Guards he had built for him. By the time Grievous looked and functioned as we would see him in the prequel trilogy, the Clone Wars were well underway. Grievous was supposed to lead his droid army from the shadows. During the Battle of Geonosis, he stayed out of the arena, hiding in the twisting Geonosian catacombs. Little did the Separatists know a Jedi was leading a small contingent of clones through the bowels of the planet to find the Separatist Council. Grievous engaged the Jedi, finally putting his new skills to the test. He killed the Jedi and added more lightsabers to his collection. As the war progressed, Grievous's victories mounted. He was promoted to the rank of General, got the even cooler title of Supreme Martial Commander, and was acting Commander-in-Chief of the entire droid army. His victories in single combat against the Jedi were also numerous, maybe even outpacing his victories in battle. He became a feared figure amongst the Order. Many considered him the best melee combatant in the galaxy. It's said he was responsible for more Jedi deaths than any other individual in all of the Clone Wars. In all of his battles against the Jedi, one fight always ended in a draw. Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi was a formidable and noble knight. His combat skills were some of the best in the Order. That just shows how capable Grievous actually was. Anakin Skywalker, perhaps the best Jedi general in all of the Clone Wars, and former apprentice to Obi-Wan, saw Grievous as a dangerous animal that needed to be put down. Grievous was part of numerous battles throughout the Clone Wars. I'm not going to go into every single detail about every last one, but he showed the Jedi time and time again how capable he was as a leader of armies and an individual combatant. His entire life was war. He thought nothing of his past. He had no loved ones. He had no code of honor. He would habitually destroy his own troops, whether sending them to the slaughter or destroying them himself in frustration. Being mostly droid didn't stop him from hating droids. Throughout his campaign, he would let hundreds of organic beings die. Not just enemy combatants, but civilians. Irreparable damage was done to planets and systems in the name of him slaying another Jedi and claiming their lightsaber. For a time, Grievous had to swallow some of his hate for Force sensitives. Dooku took on an apprentice of his own, Asajj Ventress. Ventress and Grievous had to work together for the war effort on more than one occasion, but he was never thrilled about it. After Ventress and Dooku fell out, to put it lightly, she attempted to take the Sith Lord's life. The assassination attempt failed. Grievous was sent with an army to the Night Sister homeworld of Dathomir, Asajj Ventress' homeworld. She was part of the Night Sisters, a matriarchal society built around a coven of witches. They called their mystical power magic, but it was derived from the same force that the Jedi used. To be more accurate, it was the same force that the Sith or a fallen Jedi would use, as the Night Sister powers are based in the dark side. The Night Sisters were powerful, and Dooku didn't want to risk another assassination attempt. He didn't just want the Night Sisters defeated, he wanted them annihilated. Grievous started with a bombing campaign against the much smaller civilization. The Night Sisters had no air force to fight back. The ground war that followed was not the quick sweeping victory the Separatists intended. Ventress didn't want to see more of her sisters fall in combat. She played to Grievous's pride as a warrior. She suggested single combat to find which was truly the better swordsman and warrior. If he won, the Night Sisters would surrender. If she won, the Separatist forces would leave Dathomir. Grievous took her up on the challenge. The duel was fierce. It actually seemed very even for a time. Ventress was eventually able to get the upper hand by severing one of Grievous's 4 mechanical hands. This small change was enough for her to press her advantage and knock the cyborg general on his back. Grievous was not an honorable warrior. He never intended on honoring the deal. He ordered his army to attack, saving his own life and killing more Night Sisters. Ventress did what she could to hold the army back, but a blaster bolt got through her defenses and struck her in the shoulder. She was helped off the battlefield by one of her sisters. The Night Sister raised an army of the dead. Much of their magic was akin to necromancy. That held the droids back for a time, but eventually, even the risen dead couldn't stop the onslaught of the battle droids. The Night Sisters were defeated with very, very few survivors. Near the end of the war, Anakin Skywalker overpowered and killed Count Dooku. Without having time to properly process those events, the Jedi Order, along with the Republic, knew that Grievous was the final linchpin in the Separatist war effort. With him gone, the droid army would be leaderless. Obi-Wan tracked Grievous to the planet Utapau. He had grown much as a man, leader, Jedi, and swordsman throughout the course of the Clone Wars. He confronted Grievous and his Magna Guards by himself. He dispatched the guards as if they were common B-1s, and then went head-to-head with the cyborg Jedi killer. Obi-Wan used his cleverness, along with his skill, to limit Grievous's physical advantages. The duel became something of a chase, and the two fought again on a remote platform. Grievous managed to get the upper hand for a time. Obi-Wan peeled back Grievous's armor plating, exposing the few organic organs that had survived Grievous's transformations. Having been disarmed of his lightsaber, Obi-Wan used a blaster to scorch the heart and already compromised lungs of the Kaleesh general, ending his reign of terror and a lifetime of warfare. Grievous didn't know about Palpatine or Sidious's grand plan. He didn't know about the Sith Lord pulling the strings of the entire galaxy. He didn't know he was mere days away from seeing the galaxy in his ultimate ideal scenario: the Jedi discredited, defeated, fractured, and scattered to the winds. When Sidious no longer needed the Confederate leaders, he sent his newest pupil, the fallen Jedi war hero Anakin Skywalker, now going by Darth Vader, to eliminate them. I wonder what the ensuing battle would have been if Grievous was still part of the assembly on Mustafar. I don't think galactic history would have really changed all that much. Anakin was at the height of his powers and would have dispatched Grievous, but the fight would have been something to behold. Check out this transmission next for more villains from the Star Wars galaxy.